We're so pleased you could all join us here today for this very special occasion. It's been many years in the making, and I know Jill and Vicky were probably wondering if today would ever come, but it is here, and we're all very excited, and particularly excited to be launching the MYSET, My Sensory Experiences tool, in April Autism Awareness Month. But anyway, I would like to hand over to our chair, our board chair, Neil Makepeace, to welcome you all here today and to provide an acknowledgement of country. Thank you, Neil.
Yes, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we're gathered this morning, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and to pay my respects to elders past and present and to emerging community leaders. So as Chair of Autism Queensland, it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome everybody here today. Those of you in the room and everybody else who is watching on their computer screens around the country. Today we celebrate the launch of an innovative resource that will transform the way we understand and support sensory experiences for autistic and neurodivergent people. Please come on in, sit down. The My Sensory Experiences tool, or MYSET as it is known, is the culmination of many years of research led by Dr. Jill Ashburner, Autism Queensland's Manager of Research Development in collaboration with Research Development and Commercialisation Officer Vicky Tompkins, and a diverse team of researchers and autistic consultants. MYSET represents a groundbreaking approach to sensory exploration and advocacy, which will give voice to the everyday sensory experiences of autistic and other neurodivergent children and adults. It aims to empower autistic people to describe their sensory worlds to others and to support engagement, advocacy, and meaningful participation in daily life. At its core is a profound acknowledgement of the uniqueness and complexity of sensory experiences. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Jill on her vision and her understanding of the need for this tool. It is indeed another first for our wonderful organisation, Autism Queensland, and will be, we believe, a game changer for professionals and caregivers alike. But that's enough from me. I'd now like to hand to Professor Jodie Copley to continue the MYSET story.
I'm really very excited to be here today as part of this launch because having a long history in educating occupational therapists across the globe to work in a collaborative and meaningful way with their clients, and also being on editorial boards of journals that allow me to see the new research coming through in areas like goal setting and sensory experiences, it's really clear to me that MYSET will fill a very significant gap in the tools available to occupational therapists to explore the sensory processing differences of neurodivergent children and adults. Our practice as occupational therapists to this point has been limited in truly representing what's important to the people we work with. Current sensory processing tools that we use focus predominantly on quantitative scores with the aim of comparing a person's sensory processing with typical sensory processing. And for a start, obviously that comparison is problematic. But in addition, these assessments provide very little information on the impact of sensory processing differences on the person's life or strategies that might actually help. In contrast, My Sensory Experiences is a visual card sort that's designed to engage neurodivergent people in conversation about their sensory experiences and what's important to them. So the aim is about gaining a deeper qualitative picture of the impact of the person's sensory challenges on their everyday life, all the important stuff. It supports the person to develop strategies to accommodate the sensory challenges that are relevant in their lives, or to explain the sensory strategies that they already use to other people. So very importantly, it really does champion the agency of the person, not the agenda of the professional. MYSET also supports people to self-advocate, as we've heard, for adjustments in their environments, such as the classroom or the workplace. Adjustments like this can allow a person to comfortably access their everyday environments and be their best selves in those environments. And that's something we all deserve to be able to do. MYSET has been designed to be accessible to a diverse range of neurodivergent people, regardless of age, ability, communication differences. It's also been designed to be used in a range of contexts, including individual therapy, schools, developing positive behaviour support plans, developing mental health supports, or supporting people living in supported accommodation. So it really crosses the boundaries of different services and promotes inclusive thinking. And that's absolutely what we need in the NDIS landscape. I'm sure everyone would agree with that. So as you can tell, I am a huge fan of this tool, and it was developed in a collaborative, systematic and person-centred way through a rigorous research process. And I know, as already mentioned, there's been quite a number of people involved in this process, but I really must pay tribute to its lead developer, Dr. Jill Ashburner, who is a highly respected researcher in the occupational therapy community and who has used her considerable research talents to make MYSET everything we need it to be, to improve occupational therapy practice and to improve outcomes for neurodiverse people we work with. So congratulations to everyone involved.
Thank you very much, Jodie. It's now my very great pleasure to invite Dr. Jill Ashburner and Vicky Tompkins up to the podium to tell us a little bit more about MYSET and the research that underpins its development.
That just shows how dependent I am on Vicky. I need to get her to get to the right slide. So as you've heard, it's a card sort tool that uses photographs depicting sensations in everyday environments. As the name suggests, it supports conversations with neurodivergent people about their sensory experiences. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the fabulous team of researchers who've helped us along the journey. And also, of course, our wonderful marketing and graphic design team, so Adrian Costin and Jessie Lee. And also thanks to, we had a wonderful volunteer, Shelley Heath. So what do we mean by sensory processing? Well, I'm sure you've all heard of these 5 senses: hearing, vision, touch, smell and taste. And most of you will be familiar with these senses. Proprioception, so information from receptors in our muscles and joints that tell us about the position and movement of body parts. Vestibular, so receptors in our inner ear tell us where our body is in space and whether or not we're upside down or right side up, and about the speed and direction we're moving in. Recently, there's been lots of discussion about interoception. So receptors from within the body tell us about the internal sensations, such as whether we're hungry, thirsty, feeling sick, needing to use the toilet, or if our heart is beating fast. So here's a myth-buster question to start off with. Do sensory differences relate to differences in the way that the sensory receptors work? In other words, differences in the way that the eyes, ears, nose and taste buds work. Nobody? Well, actually no. Sensory differences are not related to how the sensory receptors work, so we're not talking visual impairment or hearing impairment. The key word here is processing. So sensory processing differences relate to differences in the way that the brain processes sensory input. So our brain registers sensory information and filters out irrelevant information. For example, if we're looking for a McDonald's, we're hypervigilant to red and yellow signs and ignore or filter out other irrelevant visual information. The brain also needs to integrate information from different senses. For example, when we drive, we need to integrate the visual information that tells us about the other cars on the road with the proprioceptive information, which tells us exactly how much force we need to apply to the accelerator or the brake pedal. The brain also organises sensory information in our memory so that we can relate it to past experiences. For example, we know from prior experience that McDonald's signs are red with yellow arches. And then our brain creates an appropriate motor response. Having caught sight of a McDonald's, we turn the steering wheel just the right amount to turn into the car park. So there can be differences in all of these areas of sensory processing. So what do autistic people have to tell us about sensory processing? Well, Dr. Claire Jack says, if you're autistic, it might be difficult to explain to other people how a sound, light or sensation makes you feel. One thing that is important to get across is that this is very real and that it's probably very different from how they experience the same sensory input. What professionals see usually is what they can see, not what the autistic person experiences. And many autistic people describe their sensory problems as more disabling than their deficits in social and communication behaviour. So how has information traditionally been gathered about sensory differences? Well, we've had tick and flick checklist assessments such as the sensory profile and the sensory processing measure that predominantly rely on the ratings by parents and teachers rather than the voices of neurodivergent people. The exception is the adolescent adult sensory profile, which is a self-report checklist, but it's inaccessible to many due to the complexity of the language involved. The input of parents is undoubtedly valuable, but many parents will tell us that they're not always sure how their child experiences sensations. So these assessments yield quantitative scores that compare the person's sensory processing with typical sensory processing, whatever that is, because it's quite a nebulous concept. Quantitative scores may be useful for diagnostic purposes, but they don't tell us much about the impact on the person's life or strategies that can help. So My Sensory Experiences is a visual card sort designed to engage autistic and other neurodivergent people in conversations about sensory experiences. It's not a test. People keep asking me about the test. It's not a test. It's information, it's a means of supporting neurodivergent people to share qualitative information about their sensory experiences with the help of visual cues. My Sensory Experiences aims to support the person to develop strategies to accommodate sensory issues that are relevant to their lives. And as we often find, to explain sensory strategies that they already use to others. And to self-advocate for adjustments to their environment. So as Jodie said, to their classroom or the workplace. So what did we think about when we designed My Sensory Experiences? Well, we aim to comprehensively cover as many sensory challenges as possible, and we found sensory processing is a very complex topic. So after an extensive literature research, we included sensitivity, seeking, stimming, under-responsiveness, exteroception, interoception, predictable versus unpredictable input, multisensory integration, filtering, and the sensory elements of daily life, like hairdressers and doctors' surgeries. The pictures were not chosen at random. They are the result of a very extensive review of qualitative studies of the actual experiences of neurodivergent people. At the same time, we needed it to be sufficiently concise so that it is feasible to be used by busy therapists, teachers and other professional practitioners. We also wanted to make it accessible to a diverse range of neurodivergent people, so regardless of their age, ability or communication differences. We have found that it can be successfully completed by children at age 7 and some children as young as 5 with the support of a parent and some people with intellectual disability. For young children and people who experience challenges in completing My Sensory Experiences, we have proxy reporting versions that can be completed by caregivers who know the person well. So we've tried to include everybody. It also needed to be suitable for a range of contexts. So we're fortunate at AQ to have many professional practitioners working across a number of areas, and we got their feedback, how they used it in individual therapy, in schools, to develop positive behaviour support plans, to develop mental health supports, to support employment, and to support people living in supported accommodation. So why can't we just observe responses to real sensory input? For example, responses to a noise or a different texture or smell or taste. Well, what we found is that sensory experiences set up in a clinic setting for the purposes of observation do not reflect responses to sensory input in real-life environments. Real-life environments are typically multisensory and unpredictable. Many people will cope very well when they're presented with a single sound, light or a piece of fabric in a controlled environment because the sensory stimulus is predictable and it's presented one at a time. However, they then become very distressed in a busy food hall where there's lots of unpredictable noise, bright lights, smells and people milling around them. Why can't we just observe responses to sensory input in real life? Well, we can't always be sure what the person is experiencing or what is triggering distress. For example, if we see a student becoming distressed in a noisy school playground, we can't be sure if that's due to the noise or the fear of being bullied by other students. You can't actually see what's going on in someone's head. So the focus of my sensory experiences is to ask people directly with the support of visual cues. My sensory experiences encourages autistic and other neurodivergent people to share their experiences of sensory input in real-life environments in their own words. So why is it important to have a conversation with people about their sensory experiences? Well, here's a question for the audience. Are you bothered by the sounds of sirens, such as ambulance or police car sirens? Can we have a show of hands? Yep, most people. Most people find that quite stressful, I think mainly because of the need to get out of the way of ambulances when you're driving. So consequently, if you saw this on a checklist, you probably wouldn't think that's a big deal. However, actually listening to a neurodivergent person gives new insights into the profound impact of some sensory experiences. And I keep being blown away by what people tell me. So here we have a video of Katrina, a young autistic woman, who's describing her response to sirens. And she's also telling us about sounds that she finds calming, which gives us some important clues about strategies that can help.
I literally freeze. I start shaking and I freeze within where I'm standing. I can't move. And then and I also burst into tears. So I like the sound of clocks ticking quite a lot. It makes me go to sleep. I also love the sound of rain. Like the biggest one when I'm into meltdown is I'm with my mum or my boyfriend. I actually cuddle into them and listen to their heartbeat.
Okay, so you like those predictable, repetitive sounds?
Yeah. And that can go with that. I can go from a borderline meltdown to not happening at all.
Wow. So that's probably a bit different to how you've experienced sirens, I think, for most people. So why do we use visuals? Well, I want you to think about which of these has the biggest impact. Is it these words or these pictures? As any advertising executive will tell you, pictures can elicit a strong sensory memory. If you look at the picture of the foot touching the sand, it probably elicits memories of being at your favourite beach. For me, I immediately go to Cylinder Beach on Stradbroke Island. Pictures help people to reflect and share more about their experiences than if it was just a conversation or text. So if we asked unstructured or open-ended questions such as, are there touch sensations that you find unpleasant? You're unlikely to get much discussion. Cards with pictures can make it much easier to sustain a discussion. Pictures also cue the person to reflect on sensory items that they might not have considered because of assumptions about what we mean by sensory. Pictures can also enhance accessibility for neurodivergent people with cognitive or literacy differences, as well as those for whom English is not their first language. However, we've also seen highly educated and highly articulate individuals who benefit from having the pictures. We believe that My Sensory Experiences is consistent with a neurodiversity affirming approach. And I'd like to talk a bit about the differences between a traditional medical model of disability and a neurodiversity affirming approach with respect to supporting sensory processing. So a medical model of disability compares autistic and other neurodivergent people to neurotypical norms, and deficits are seen as a fault that resides within the individual. The goal is to remediate or eliminate disability where the optimal outcome is seen as neurotypical. The implications for supporting sensory processing are that standardised norm reference assessments are used and clinicians intervene if the performance is perceived to be atypical. For example, stimming, by which we mean things like body rocking and hand flapping, are seen as atypical and needing to be eradicated. Highly intensive interventions, which often actually have limited evidence, are used to remediate or fix the way that the brain processes sensory input. In contrast, a neurodiversity affirming approach views neurological differences between people as natural genetic variations. This approach recognises that challenges may result from the mismatch between the person and their environment. The implications for supporting sensory processing are that we accept sensory differences as part of who people are. We provide support only if the person perceives their sensory experiences to be a barrier to achieving what they need or want to do. We support modifications to sensory environments, and we recognise that people have often developed their own strategies. For example, stimming is now recognised as having an important self-regulatory function. And we support people in self-advocating for adjustments to accommodate their sensory needs. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the research we've used to co-design My Sensory Experiences. We used 3 cycles of participatory action research, and participatory action research is a cyclical process with each cycle involving planning, action, observation and reflection. It's often used for the development and refinement of tools. So our first version of My Sensory Experiences was a booklet, as you can see here. Participants circled items in the booklet that they found bothersome or enjoyable. In cycle 1, we gathered feedback from occupational therapists who used the tool with 11 autistic adolescents, and this resulted in the first revision of the My Sensory Experiences booklet. In cycle 2, we surveyed 36 autistic people and 24 family members about the comprehensiveness of the tool, and we found more about the items that were most likely to be identified as problematic. So we then redeveloped My Sensory Experiences into a card sort, as you can see here. Cycle 3 entailed a qualitative exploration of the card sort version involving autistic people, family members and professional practitioners. Further refinements led to the current version of My Sensory Experiences. I'll now hand over to Vicky, who's going to tell you more about how My Sensory Experiences works.
Thanks, Jill. So we thought we'd spend a little bit of time now sharing with you what the My Sensory Experiences tool is, what it looks like and how it can be used. This will include some videos of participants sharing about their experiences, and I really particularly wanted to thank Meryl for allowing us to generously share her experiences with you today. So what's in the kit? Well, we have included a user manual which provides the background and research for the tool, as well as more specific details of the administration of the tool. We also have a quick start guide that includes photocopiable templates. We didn't want people to have the ongoing costs associated with purchasing packs of single-use forms. So this means once you purchase the kit, you'll have everything that you need. We know that predictability around what to expect when using a new tool is really important. It can help people feel calmer and reduce processing demands. Therefore, we have a number of resources to support this, including a participant frequently asked questions card. This helps explain to participants what the tool is, how it may be useful, and introduces visual supports within the tool. A caregiver frequently asked questions card can be used to support caregiver understanding of the rationale for using the tool, as well as guidance around what their role might look like in supporting an individual during the process. This includes how they might provide examples to give context for the person when reflecting on the cards. For example, when looking at the card representing crowds, a parent might offer, "Remember when we went to the city for Christmas shopping and there were lots of people?" What to expect stories, like this one here, have been designed to introduce each understanding and predictability about what is happening next for the participant, but it also has the added benefit of providing structure and prompting for the administrator of the tool. Completing the My Sensory Experiences process involves and identifies to be problematic on an impact rating scale, and completing the strategy and support planning process. There are different sorting plates depending on which category of cards are being sorted. The majority of cards are sorted in the first phase, which explores sensory preferences. Cards are sorted into piles representing "I love this," "This is okay," or "I hate this." Ideally, the cards are sorted quite quickly, so we encourage the individual to follow their initial or gut reaction. We'll watch a short video now of Meryl sorting cards to share about her sensory preferences.
Touching soft or fluffy things. Yeah, I'm in the middle of that. Depends. Some things feel nice, some things don't feel nice. For instance, I love petting my cat, but I don't like the feeling of wool. Wool's really itchy.
Do you want to put that one over there?
Yeah, because that,
It depends.
yeah, wearing wool clothes, yeah, I don't like that. I don't really wear wool that often. Depends if it's like this, where it's kind of like embroidered and it's not a smooth pattern, because you got some cotton clothes that are sewn where the thread count's higher, so it's smoother, that's okay. But when it comes to stuff like this, I don't like it at all. Sitting still, don't really care about that. Moving in the water, don't really care about that. Eating a variety of food, I don't mind that at all. I like trying new things all the time. So textures in terms of taste or anything like that doesn't bother me. These are very good, by the way. So, this is better than just regular conversation. They would definitely help people along, like with things that they're not thinking of.
The second sorting phase explores sensory seeking or stimming using sorting plates "I don't do this much" or "I do this a lot." Meryl's going to demonstrate this part of the phase.
So looking at spinning objects, yeah, I do that a lot when I'm really overwhelmed. So I've got a fidget spinner in my car that I like twirling and looking at, and it's really mesmerizing.
Yeah.
The third sorting phase explores sensations that individuals might notice a lot, and this can be a problem. "This is okay," or "not notice," and this can be a problem. Again, Meryl's going to demonstrate this phase of the sorting process.
Pain. Oh yeah, I've noticed that a lot. I've got a low threshold to pain, to be honest. Heart rate and breathing, hell yeah. I used to be scared of breathing. I know that's weird and it sounds weird, but I can sort of feel it. Oh goodness. I can feel it in my body, but also I can also feel my heartbeat all throughout my body, like from my head to my toes. Like I can just feel it very strongly, and it used to freak me out, but I've gotten used to it. But yeah, I noticed that a lot.
So that bothers you, that you notice it too much?
When I started meditating and stuff like that, like when I was younger, it bothered me a lot because I didn't know how to deal with it. But then I realized that's just normal. That's just, that's what the body is doing to keep you alive.
We've also included the option of caregiver educator sorting plates and a caregiver educator observation booklet. We think it's important to assume competence and always give the person the opportunity to try sorting the cards first. However, the option of a caregiver educator sorting the cards or completing the observation booklet instead of or in addition to the participant card sort may be relevant when the person has a significant intellectual or language impairment and has difficulty understanding or engaging in the process despite any accommodations you might try. Similarly, if a child is too young to understand or engage in the process, you could use the tool with a caregiver or educator who knows the person well. It might be important to capture additional information from the caregiver educator perspective because they are making lots of accommodations, which might be important for us to know about and support, particularly if they're not sustainable. There is one additional base plate that is consistently provided with every card sorting phase, and this is the I'm not sure base plate, which provides a space for participants to place cards if they are having trouble choosing a sorting pile. We introduced this base plate because participants were often commenting, well, it depends. This was an indication that they wanted to share some additional information about the context of the sensory experience that was important to be understood. Cards placed in this pile can therefore be explored, additional comments recorded, and then a decision as to where it might best fit for that individual. Often this results in developing a more individualised card using the something else card to capture a specific context or scenario. Something else cards can also be used to capture anything that participant would like to share that's not already captured on the sensory experience cards. Once all of the cards have been sorted, people can rate cards that they have identified as I hate this or this is a problem on an impact rating scale. This helps prioritise which sensory experiences are having the biggest impact on their life. We have used a 10-point scale with a score of 10 at one end of the scale, identifying that this is having a big impact for me, and 1 at the other end, identifying this has a little impact on my life. If the number scale is tricky for some, they may respond better to the simplicity of the face icons to identify their big problems. The next video will show Meryl sharing about the impact of sensory experiences and rating them on the scale. You'll also notice Meryl identifying an additional sensory experience that Jill adds to a something else card.
Parties. I hate this. Put that there. Public transport, that's okay. Put that in the middle there. Crowds. Put that in the, it's kind of lesser. Because with public transport, you're in an enclosed space. Crowds, you can escape if you want to. That's the difference. Yeah. You got an exit strategy. Eye contact, facial. Yeah, I always have a problem with that. I have to put extra effort in for that. Yeah. People talking to me, if I'm, yeah, that's kind of minor. Loud voices, that's minor too. Other people talking, that's minor as well. Shopping centre, that's kind of here as well, so that's categorised. Pain, I can deal with that because I live with it on a daily basis. That doesn't really bother me anymore, but it used to. Noisy household appliances, that depends if other people are controlling it. If I'm controlling it, no issues at all, but if someone else is doing it, it drives me nuts. Really like 4 or 3. Noisy vehicles, trucks and motorbikes. Depends on how far away I am from it. I live like right near a main freeway. I'm used to it now, but you know, it's at first it was driving me crazy, so I'm just gonna put it there. Noisy, yeah, that's categorized in the same section as noisy household appliances, noisy bathroom appliances. If I'm not in control of it, it'll drive me nuts. Touching sand, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like going to the beach for that reason. It gets everywhere. Wearing wool clothes, don't like that either. That's a challenge as well. I avoid these. Yeah. The things that are in the section of like them being big problems / challenges, they are things that I tend to avoid.
Yeah. Can I just go through and we'll give these things a number? So
Yeah.
Parties.
We'll make that an 8.
An 8.
Yeah. because I don't avoid it altogether completely. Wearing wool clothes is a 10 because I avoid that completely. I hate that so much. It'd be like a torture device, to be honest.
Yeah, okay.
Touching sand, that's the same as parties because sometimes you gotta go to social occasions to touch the sand.
So you avoid going to the beach?
Yeah, I do. Shopping centre. That would be a bit higher than public transport in school, so 5. But I've got the coping mechanism of headphones. If I forget my headphones, I will look at the ground and avoid crowds.
Yeah,
So
you can do it without your headphones.
yeah. There are times where I forget my headphones all the time. I don't freak out and say, oh, I'm not going to go in there. I'm like, well, I'm already here. You know, I spent all this time driving here, and it would be inconvenient for me to just go back because of that. Difference is that if this was at the gym, I wouldn't go to the gym if I didn't have my headphones.
Yeah.
Because in the gym, they have really loud music blaring.
Yeah.
And I hate that. And not just that, you've got other things. So in the context of the gym, couldn't handle it. I'm going home. And I've got to get my headphones because I can't work out like with that constant noise blaring. All these people moving all over the place, you feel vulnerable as well because, you know, you're exercising, right? And it's like, yeah, I don't want to be bothered when I'm feeling at my worst.
Yeah.
So that's different. If you had like a colour for the gym, that would be like an 8. That's so difficult to deal
We're
with.
not at that over here.
Yeah.
So is it also people dropping their weights and things like
Yeah, and people grunting and, you know, because you're there to work out, you're not there to do anything else, and it's just, you know, there's a lot to handle there.
that? Yeah.
So if I don't bring my headphones, I'm not going to go.
Okay.
That's the difference between the shopping centre, because with the gym, you're kind of in one enclosed space where there's different equipment that you want to use. So you've got to be in the proximity of other people. Whereas at the shopping centre, you grab your food and you just go.
So I hope you're starting to see the kind of rich information you can get from these conversations and the importance, I guess, of understanding the context. So once you have a good understanding of the sensory experiences that are a priority for support, you can work together on strategy generation and planning. Using the template provided, you can list the problematic sensation, describe the impact, including when and where it affects the individual, explore ways to reduce the impact of the sensory experience, and identify who can help action this plan and how. This document is intended to be a collaborative process, and so it's important to consider how to best capture and share information in a way that's meaningful to the participant. For example, they may prefer pictures to text. As Jill mentioned, there are some preliminary themes emerging from the final research cycle. These themes include that the tool supports people to describe their sensory experiences to others. It accommodates the diversity of autistic people, helps develop self-awareness of the impact of sensory experiences. The strategy planning is useful. It's relevant to educational settings, and the visual cues are helpful. And as Jill mentioned, we have seen non-speaking children through to autistic academics embrace the usefulness of the visual aspects of this tool. So in summary, why use my sensory experiences? Well, as we've demonstrated today, it's a neurodiversity affirming approach to sensory processing. Listening to the voice of autistic and other neurodivergent people is really important for better understanding their sensory experiences. Sensory experiences are unique to each individual, and other people's perspectives are an interpretation of what the person is actually experiencing, which may or may not be accurate. The My Sensory Experiences provides descriptive, qualitative information about sensory experiences that are unique to the person's life context. As we've seen from the videos with Meryl today, the way someone engages with or responds to sensory experiences is unique and multidimensional. Trying to fit people into a sensory processing category like a sensory seeker or sensory avoider, or classifying them as more or less atypical is not particularly useful. Understanding how these experiences impact negatively or positively within a person's life context allows for greater understanding and facilitates person-centred planning and support. Through using my sensory experiences, people are empowered to have a say about what's an issue for them and what would be supportive. So hopefully you're as excited as we are about this tool and its potential to empower and support neurodivergent people. The tool is now available for purchase via the Autism Queensland website. If you would like, or if you like what you're seeing today and hearing today, please share far and wide with your networks. As a not-for-profit, all the proceeds from sales go back into services to support autistic people and their families. So thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Vicky. I'm sure you'll have many people wanting to speak to you when we finish. I would now like to invite Jamie Stackpool up to speak to us and give us his perspective on the tool as an autistic person. Thank you, Jamie.
I'm just going to set up my little timer here, another one of my fun executive function tools, so I can actually know when to stop talking. I have a little bit of a problem with that sometimes. Alrighty, so this sensory tool I found when I was actually using it very, very useful in, I guess, figuring out ways or different sensory experiences that I didn't actually realise was going on for me. So I want to start off with, I guess, a little bit of a experiment. I want everyone to look around the room and I want you to think, what sensory experiences in this room do you think would impact you, yourself? Just want to take a moment to look around. You might think, okay, well, the aircon might be different temperature, whether it's too cold for you or too hot for you, depending. You might think maybe the lights are affecting a little bit. You might not realise that the aircon's making a lot of noise. That can be quite distracting for people. You might not realise the people that are rummaging through their bags, breathing a little bit heavier. You might not hear the people next door in the next room actually, putting boxes down or chairs or setting up. There are a lot of different aspects to sensory experiences that you don't realise that's going on. For an autistic person like myself, it's a culmination of a lot of different sensory impacts that really, I guess, cause a lot of distress in everyday life. Might make a bit uncomfortable to do certain things. So, for example, seating. You might not realise how the seat feels underneath you until you actually focus. Myself, as an autistic person, I can feel that the metal is slightly different to the actual material, and there's a little bit of a lump in the centre. You might not feel that, there's something in your shoe, but I feel like I'm pretty sure there's a tiny pebble right at the tip of my shoe that's been nagging at me the whole time. There are all different sensory experiences that, when you put them all together, can cause a range from, uncomfortable feelings, distress, up to, for some people, quite significant pain. And knowing that going through your everyday life is so important, because sometimes you don't actually realise what's causing that, anger, or what's causing that irritability, or why did I snap at my mother like that? She just asked me what I wanted for lunch. So that knowledge is so important, also in different aspects. So imagine a child at school. When you're in the classroom, there are so many different things going on. There's kids yelling, usually. There's the teacher trying to talk over it. There's the clocks ticking. There's the bells outside, people running around the playground, people going and getting drinks. So many different aspects that child has to have on a daily basis. At work, I remember when I used to work in a kitchen, worked as a cook for about 14 years, and I didn't realise how much of an impact that kitchen had on me. I didn't realise that it was the smells, didn't realise that walking in and out of the freezer all the time was causing distress. And knowing that now, as I was late diagnosed, I can put in different strategies to help with that. And the MySensory tool can really be quite beneficial. I didn't realise that certain sensory experiences were affecting me when I was going through the cards. So, for example, and like Meryl, I hate wool, apart from my wool vests. What makes that different? Well, these wool vests, they're thin. The strands are thin, the pieces of wool are thin. The one on the card are thick. And so having that contextual difference, I can go, okay, well now I can avoid these certain things, because previously I was like, why do I feel so angry wearing these wool sweaters that my mother buys me? Certain things such as, going to the sand, going to the beach, going different areas. Now, the stimming aspect is another one that you don't realise you do on an everyday basis. I, probably sitting in the seat, do piano fingers. Don't realise I'm doing it until I actually can see it on the cards and go, actually, no, that is really useful for me. This tool, because it's such a visual, hands-on tool, you can actually see what's going on and make the connection. Oh, I didn't realise that that was causing me quite a lot of distress. And it helped me with a few different realizations. Jill actually helped me a lot when I was like, oh no, I can handle people touching me. Yeah, I tense up and when people touch me unexpectedly, but I can handle it, it's fine, it's not an issue. And Jill mentioned, oh, well, maybe that's because you're creating your own overriding sensory experience. So with this tool, I think having that knowledge and then being able to translate it into strategies can be so powerful to give to people, because quite often we don't have a voice to be able to say these things. Maybe we don't know exactly what's going on. Maybe we need help expressing it, because it can be really quite difficult going up to an employer or a teacher and going, hey, look, I have these needs. Can you please provide for them? So having a tool like this, I think, is a fantastic asset for an autistic individual to be like, I have these lists of strategies now. I have these lists of sensory experiences. Can I please, get help with these accommodations? Which will allow that person to then go through life realizing that, hey, it's okay to advocate for my needs. And maybe I'm not going to be as stressed at work because the fluorescent lights aren't affecting me because I'm allowed to wear sunglasses. Or maybe it's okay at school because the teacher now allows me to wear noise-cancelling headphones. So this tool not only benefits the autistic person themselves, but everyone else around them. They can now better accommodate. They can now help the autistic person. But also, some of these accommodations can be really useful for everybody, right? I mean, you can't tell me that you wouldn't really, like in bright lights, want to wear sunglasses inside, right? Or if there's a lot of construction outside, you wouldn't want to wear noise-cancelling headphones. So it can be really beneficial for everyone, but for an autistic person, it can mean the difference between being able to meaningfully participate in what you're doing at school or what you're doing at work and not being able to participate at all. So the tool itself is such a great way to show people what my needs are. And it can be used both without the clinicians, but with the clinicians, and I actually found it quite helpful with Jill there explaining to me context. So sometimes I was like, it just depends, and Jill's like, oh, well, what about this, what about that? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So having that contextual aspect can be so powerful as well. So I guess in summary, I really like the tool. I think it's really useful for the autistic experience, whether or not you're able to verbally say what you want to say, or whether you're not able to speak and you're not able to self-advocate for yourself. At least having this sort of tool can allow you to advocate for your needs as much as you can and help you have meaningful participation in all aspects, a lot of different aspects in life. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Jamie, for sharing your reflections and experiences with MYSET. And I would now like to invite Diana Kerr up to speak to us, and from the perspective of a parent of a young man.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to be with you today at the launch of the My Sensory Experiences Toolkit to talk about the benefits of this really valuable tool. But first, let me introduce you to my beautiful son. Benji is a park adventurer, a swimmer, a student, a technology whiz, a beach goer, a nature lover, an adventure seeker, a brother, a friend, and one of the kindest, most loving people I have had the pleasure of knowing, and I am lucky enough to call him my son. But day to day, to take on these many valued roles, he's incredibly affected by the overwhelming and overbearing world in which we live due to his many sensory sensitivities. We all love the taste of some foods, for me it's cheese, and despise others like Brussels sprouts. Or we love the sound of the ocean, or perhaps we prefer the smell of the rainforest. We all have these preferences and appreciate and respect them about each other, but this is not always the case when we're talking about our autistic and neurodiverse folk. There is an expectation autistic people will just fit into our world, even if at times it is too painful to do so. I don't believe this lack of understanding is intentional. Sensory systems are complex and present differently for everyone, and there is a real lack of good information and resources to support us in this understanding. This is where I see the incredible value of the My Sensory Experiences Toolkit. Not only has it been co-designed with autistic people, which is vitally important for validity, it uses pictures and an easy sorting system, which we know is much more accessible to most autistic people. I had no idea about the impact of Benji's sensory systems in his day-to-day until I attended a sensory and movement differences workshop. It was like a light bulb had switched on. I suddenly had so much more empathy, understanding, and now I had knowledge, so I was able to educate others. But this wasn't always easy, as I wasn't able to explain the information in a way that would make a real difference in implementing the appropriate support, which is what I feel the My Sensory Experiences Toolkit does so well. In my opinion, and I feel many other parents of autistic children would agree, there is no more challenging sensory environment with such little understanding as the school environment. Working with the My Sensory Experiences Toolkit, we were able to work through all of the sensory triggers that Benji had experienced in the school environment. There was the unexpected ringing phone in the classroom, the lollipop person's whistle at the crossing, the fire alarm drills, how difficult it was for Benji to filter out all the noises of a busy classroom so he could listen to the teacher or even concentrate on a task. His need to move regularly, the hand dryers in the bathroom, the music that starts the school day, to name but a few. Every day there is a myriad of sensory triggers for Benji in the school environment, and he's just expected to get on with it and engage in the learning, which is near impossible when your nervous system is dysregulated all of the time. So having the information from the My Sensory Experiences report, the school team were able to implement some strategies that really helped. For example, giving Benji warning when they were about to do a fire drill. Looking at environmental adjustments to reduce classroom noise. Understanding and respecting Benji's need to move and giving him regular opportunities to do this throughout the day. Considering the diverse needs of all students and putting a whole class approach into practice will not only help Benji, but a number of other children in the classroom too. The My Sensory Experiences Toolkit makes this information accessible, which helps teachers put into practice strategies to manage their classrooms more effectively and carry out their very important roles of teaching our children. The reality currently is that teachers have next to no knowledge on this topic. There are few professional development opportunities in this area, and so many things that are deemed behaviour are in fact related to our lack of understanding and triggers in regard to a person's sensory needs. There is hardly any consideration given to the learning environment and the design of classrooms and other spaces to be more inclusive of all children. While I have chosen an inclusive education for my son, as I wholeheartedly agree it's the foundation for an inclusive life, It's not a choice when his it's not really a choice when his sensory sensitivities are hardly considered. And it certainly doesn't make for an equitable education, which he absolutely deserves. I'm fortunate to have a school that works really collaboratively and wants Benji to be successful. But there is a limited understanding of Benji's sensory needs and how to help him regulate throughout the day by meeting those sensory needs so he can access the learning rather than assuming his behaviour is telling us he can't or he doesn't want to. I really feel schools would hugely benefit from the My Sensory Experiences Toolkit. Teachers will feel empowered by having good information that they can use and work with. Autistic people will feel like their voices are being heard, and strategies that are implemented will hopefully be made at a broader level to accommodate all children, and we will make the reality of a true inclusive education that much closer. I'm really excited about the prospect of how the My Sensory Experiences Toolkit can be utilised by schools, teachers, educators and families. Schools and communities are filled with good people who sometimes just need more knowledge to make change happen. I do believe of most people that once you know better, you do better. But you have to have the tools to know in the first place, so we can begin to make a real difference to autistic people's sensory experiences. This tool is easy to use, produces a user-friendly report that is practical and useful. It provides strategies and ideas that can be utilised to make school and the broader community a more acceptable and enjoyable place for us all. And I just want to leave you with a quote. Inclusion is not about bringing people into what already exists. It is making a space, a better space for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and yeah, what a wonderful quote to end on. I really want to again thank all of our speakers this morning for sharing information about MYSET, its development, the research, and to those speakers who also shared their personal experiences with the MYSET. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for being here today. It's really exciting for us to be able to share this day with you. Please join us now for some morning tea and take the opportunity to connect with anyone you wish to. Thank you.